All right, the property prequel, be in the know before you buy. Nathan Cross, how are you?
Shrams, mate, I'm going very well. How are you?
Yeah, good. I'm excited for today's app. Oh, one of your faves, negotiation masterclass here.
Love it.
Love it, love it. It's a key role of the transaction, isn't it? Like, I thought we'd just do a really quick app on a piece of the puzzle that a lot of buyers, before they actually buy, really struggle with, I feel, people don't know where to start or they don't know how to approach it. I always get messages about it and different, what should I say or what should I do? And so we're just going to quickly unpack it and we thought we'd stay nice and niche just on that negotiation side of things. Obviously a key part of the process, mate.
Yeah, massive part. And I reckon at the moment it's quite topical and very sort of poignant or important because we've gone from a booming market the last couple of years to now softer market off the back of successive interest rate rises. So people who are in a position to buy can sense that potentially it's a good time to negotiate.
Yes.
But as you say, mate, what we want to look at today is, well, where do you start? What is negotiation? You know, if a property's for sale for 800,000, is an offer of 750 a good offer? Like, who knows? Like, that's where industry professionals like yourself, that's your bread and butter, and a really good one for us to talk about today.
100%. And I think a good place to start, Cross, is essentially coming into a negotiation, what the mindset is.
Yes.
This isn't even just property related. I really feel it's across the board. I love studying negotiation and human psychology and whatnot. And probably the biggest key takeaway I always get is that you really want to come into it with the mindset of you want to create a win outcome for everyone.
Yep.
That's probably the biggest thing. Biggest feedback I can give to buyers or anyone entering any sort of industry negotiation is come into the scenario wanting to get a win for everyone at the table and not come in the mindset of I'm here to win and I'm going to be the only one who eats all the pie as well. I think too many people focus on that.
In your experience, do you see that a lot? People come in thinking, I've got to get this for the cheapest price I can, or when they engage your services, do they really focus on that and saying, if we can get it for the cheapest price I want, Matt's justified his service and his fee, and that's a win for me?
Exactly, yeah. And some people, look, most cases, everyone wants a bargain, right? In any field of life. Like, I know me and you, when we do our groceries, you know, or our Coles, I see you're always looking for a bargain.
All the time. Walking those laps of Coles.
Always looking for a bargain. And who wouldn't want that?
Yep.
But I feel the part of negotiation people forget is, okay, if you want that, how do you get that? What's the bridge to get there? And I feel creating the win-win of all the stakeholders involved is a big one. And I just wanted to touch on, in a real estate transaction, I feel the stakeholders, seller, the owner of the property.
Yep.
You got, if they're using a real estate agent, the sales agent's a stakeholder. And then you got yourself as the buyer. So just saying, I'm out of the picture as a buyer's agent.
Sure.
A buyer.
Yep.
We're giving advice here for buyers.
Yep.
So your main key stakeholders really are the agent and the seller here, really, and yourself. So knowing that, who the stakeholders are, you got to think, okay, what's in it, not only for myself, what's in it for everyone at the table here? Like, what do they want?
Yep.
So straight away, I'd be sort of looking at that transaction and thinking, mindset is, okay, what would their agent want out of this little deal?
Get paid quickly.
What would the seller want out of this deal? You know, and what do I want out of this deal as well? You got to know who your key stakeholders are and then understand what all the leverage points are to try and get them all to agree. Because at the end of the day, everyone's got different dimensions on what they want out of this deal. Your job as a good negotiator should be to understand everyone's needs and wants and then trying to make that happen. I think too many people focus on themselves. What do I want out of this negotiation? And don't worry about anyone else. And you see killed deals. You see deals that might have went through and you've burnt a lot of people as well, which, as you know, mate, is detriment not only to reputation but future deals or even just the deal itself. Things always go wrong if you're treating it like that.
Yeah, and I think we might have even covered this in a previous ep. You know, actually, if you're the buyer, treating the agent with utmost respect. You know, I think a lot of real estate agents get a bad rap, and some of them probably bring that upon themselves, but the vast majority of them, I think, do a pretty good job. And, you know, if you're going in with the mindset that obviously you want to get it as cheap as possible, well, that's okay. But remember, like, if you actually show some respect to the agent, return their calls, if you say you're going to do something, do it, you'll get that respect reciprocated, and then you'll be a better chance of negotiating the deal that you're looking for.
100%. And you nailed it there. What I find is the best negotiations I've ever done have always left everyone feeling like they had a win. Big tip.
It is.
When you go into a negotiation, realize who are the key stakeholders, what do each of them want, how can I facilitate their needs and wants. So when the transaction is done, everyone has a sense of feeling like they had the win. And the key word there, Crosshair used, is feeling like they had a win. You know, so you need to be able to do things and manipulate the deals in ways where, hey, you're facilitating the sell and you're helping them. You're facilitating the agent. You're building rapport and trust and helping them as well. So key tip for buyers, I think, is firstly understanding who the key stakeholders are, knowing each stakeholder has a need and want, and your goal as a good negotiator, which should be your goal as a buyer, is understanding, okay, I need to try and find out what everyone's needs and wants are, and I'm going to try and make it happen for them, and still understand what mine are. And that comes through, I feel, asking the right questions is probably one. And then secondly, what you said is making people feel like you're trying to help them. And probably my biggest tip to buyers is, again, people go into a transaction thinking, what's in it for me? I'm going to come in quite broad and confident and not care around anyone else, quite arrogant potentially.
Yeah.
You know, that's not doing anyone any favors. And I know you were obviously in the sales agent game as well, and you've dealt in a lot of negotiations.
Yeah.
Key tip for buyers, when you were an agent, what would you look for, or like what were the deals you felt were really positive deals?
Well, again, I'll reverse engineer it. So now I'm in the agent shoes. I'd look for buyers who are genuine, buyers who are actually, you got a really good feeling that they could put their money where their mouth was.
Oh, that's a big one.
I think it's big, you know, because again, as agents, you do know that the buyer obviously wants to transact on a property. They're showing interest. They might be showing some emotional signs that they're connected to the property, but you want to know that they can actually deliver upon the transaction. And then when you call them, and that they actually take your call, or they call you back, and just, it sounds really simple, but being respectful, you know,
Yes.
if that buyer is respectful, because if that buyer is showing me respect, I'll actually show them some respect. And if they actually tell me something, I will treat it on face value. Whereas if they're a bit cagey, or they're being super arrogant and they're telling me things, I'll probably second guess. I'll probably actually think, you know what, okay, that's what you're telling me. I'm not so sure that's the case. But if someone treats you with the respect, I'm going to give it back, and hopefully you can work towards a successful negotiation. So
100%.
I reckon that's one tip.
Mate, that's gold. That's gold. And that, as we were saying, that's a good place to start. And then probably one thing I always notice, Crossing, you would have got this as well as a sales agent, you get those buyers who come in with the checklist of questions to ask the agent, and they're like they're interviewing the agent, or why are they selling, what this, what that, you know, just hounding them, all these questions. What can you tell me about that in the corner there? You know, which is great. You're asking questions, but my big point on that is, what are you doing with the intel?
with the answers. Yeah.
You know,
it's like someone's told me to ask these questions, and now I don't know what the hell to do with the answers.
Mate, huge one.
Yeah.
So if you're a buyer, key takeaway is, ask the right questions. Don't go in there thinking you got this checklist of questions. The main thing is, you ask the questions, you get the answers. What are you doing with the answers to leverage getting all key stakeholders involved in the negotiation?
Yeah.
And a little key takeaway here for buyers is like when someone asks, what's the reason of sale? You know, the agent or whoever might say, they're bought elsewhere. You know, has the deal already gone through? Like, has it gone unconditional? You know, and if they say, yes, it's, you know, is there settlement date anytime soon? Or is it, you know, they might say it's in December. So right there, I've found out, right? I've got some intel, but now I know what to do with it. Because remember, I said at the start, I need to create that leverage point and try and get a win.
Yep.
So my alarm bell says to me, hey, I can help this person by trying to get my side to agree to a December settlement date or something that's going to help. So you ask the question, if I could do a settlement date on December, like, is there a date in particular? Or agent might say, I've had plenty like this. Agent says, 15th of December is when they love that.
Yeah.
Say, cool, let me try my best. Do you know what I mean? So straight away, it's like I'm ticking the box there. So
now, just further to that, if you can do that, all of a sudden price is not as critical, correct?
100%. So what does that look after? That looks after me as the buyer or who I'm representing, because obviously for us, we want to try and get it for a fair price. And so right there with asking a right question, knowing what to do with the question, I've probably ticked 2 boxes there in terms of key stakeholders in the deal and satisfying them, and you got the agent involved as well. So that's overarching. That's probably a big one, asking the right questions, knowing the intel, what to do with it, and creating the win-win. Because I tell you what, 99% of the deals we do, when you come in with the mentality everyone wants to win, you leave the negotiation feeling happy.
Yep.
Not only for yourself, you got a good result, but you shook hands with everyone else. You've actually helped the seller as best you could. It doesn't always work to a T, but you've tried your best. And I think that's the biggest positive of how I feel a good negotiation goes, is how did everyone leave the scenario?
That's a great point, because even if you're a seller, you generally want to know who your buyer is. So if you're selling your place, you go, aren't they a lovely young couple, or we'd love to see the home go to a really nice family, or whatever it is. And if that nice young couple or family actually treats you with a bit of respect as the agent and actually delivers upon what they said they would, then as you said, Trams, it's a great outcome for everyone. It's that win-win. So I think that's important. Mate, I wanted to ask you, just further to my point at the top, was we're in this market at the moment which is have had some negative sentiment around it, a few headwinds in our economy. Just some tips for buyers. They go to an open home on Saturday, there's no one there. They're the only person or people there. It might be a couple. Geez, really love the property, no price. They go to the open home that's again on the Thursday night, they're the only people there again. How does that negotiation look? Let's give some intel to buyers who potentially don't know where to start. How would you approach a negotiation where you're the only genuinely interested people, but you're really unsure on where to start from a price point of view?
Good question. I think the first thing is leverage points of the deal as well. I feel there's 2 parts. You need to know what the property's worth. You need to know what the seller wants. They're really the 2. You need to close that gap. So knowing what the property's worth comes down to research and understanding. And that's why people often, outsource the help. But if you're doing it on your own, don't you think, we always say this, people will spend more time choosing their gym outfit than they do researching their a $1 to $2 million asset, $600,000 asset.
Scary.
Just do some research. It's not hard. Comparable sales, see what's in the area, square meterage, location, all those sorts of things. Spend maybe 1 to 2 weeks. It won't take too much to pick up what potentially it's worth. Comparable sales, generally the sales agent would have that on board as well, because you need to know somewhat what it's worth, and at least that way that's your anchor point. And then, as we were saying before, questions around what's facilitating the seller or what's their expectation on price. Sometimes people are afraid to ask. I feel a less intrusive question is something to the agent, like, what's the expectation of the seller with price?
Yes,
because it takes the agent out of it. Because it was nothing more annoying when a buyer is kind of like, "Oh, Nathan, how much is it?" And like, what do you mean you can't tell me what?
Yeah.
I always feel changing the dialogue a little bit and just saying, "Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Agent, what's the expectation of price for the seller?"
Yeah,
because all of a sudden the agents become the middleman.
Yes,
and then you trying to ask them like, "Hey, me and you can work together. Like, just where's the expectation?" And expectation's a different word than
it is.
How much is it?
And it's funny, one Trams, just onto that point, because, and I'm sure it's happened to you before. It's certainly happened to me, and it might have happened to our listeners. Is that you ask that question? Okay, what's sort of the expectations of the vendor or the seller? What are they thinking? Well, then depending on who the agent is, you might get quite a vague sort of answer. Oh, well, they're not sure yet. So I always used to follow it up with a question that said, okay, I understand that. So what did you as the agent, what did you appraise it at?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it kind of, and again, I think a good agent will be straight with you. And if the agent wants to dance around it and do all that sort of garbage, and I get it, if it's an auction, obviously it's tricky. There's rules and regulations around that. But if it's a private treaty sale, if the agent's going to be fair income and respectful in return,
100%.
you've got to give a bit back, right?
And they'll be honest, because at the end of the day, an agent wants to sell the property so they get paid. Like,
exactly.
In all honesty.
Yeah.
So you're exactly right. So if you get some intel on what it's worth, I think that's very important. Just knowing somewhat what it's worth, knowing somewhat of the expectation of the sellers or the agent's appraised price. All of a sudden, you can see where the two leverage points are. It could be really close, or it could be really far. For me as a buyer's agent, a key tip for buyers is when I assess that gap, that really relates to the realness of the deal. Like if it's super close, I'm saying to the agent, hey, could you get me the paperwork in the next half hour?
Nice.
And then start negotiating, because I can deem value of the property straight away. I know what's good value. I know the motivation. I've asked those key questions to understand the motivation, maybe reason of sale, the settlement requirements. Is there any sort of clauses we can put in to facilitate the seller? And if there's tick, 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 it's like, hey, what can I do to get this on paper before anyone else? So music to an agent's ears is, hey, could you send me a copy of the contract within the next half hour? And I'm not talking letter of offer. I'm talking full real estate REIQ contract.
They're thinking we could be on here.
100%.
Yeah.
And how do you think the agent's going to start feeling then? As we said, you're ticking all the boxes of who you're pleasing. Nothing. You could relate. How good is that feeling when a buyer says, hey, could you send me the formal contract to my inbox? It's great. It's great news, right?
It's a great feeling. And even just thinking about, like, knowledge is power, isn't it? No matter what we're talking about, but particularly in property. So again, come back to my scenario around, you're the only people going through the open home on a Saturday, and you're the only people on the Thursday afternoon. If you go into that without the knowledge,
yes,
and you're not either A, asking questions, or B, you're asking the wrong questions, depending on the agent, they may take advantage of that situation. You may 100%. End up paying more than what you need to.
Yep.
But if you've armed yourself with the knowledge and you've got that power because of that, you go into that fairly confident that you're going to pay, at worst, you're going to pay market price.
Yeah, and you're right. And just on that scenario, quickly to add, buyers, if you are in a scenario where you feel like you're the only one there, I see a lot of buyers go like really aggressive with that and nearly disrespectful to, oh, mate, I'm the only one here, mate.
Yeah.
Like I'm paying $100,000 below what this is worth, So instead, I don't really talk around anyone else. I'm just taking visual notes that, hey, I'm the only one here, and there hasn't been many through the campaign total. So for me, that's an opportunity to deal direct with the agent, asking for the copy of the contract and putting, whatever price you deem as value, and you're just negotiating on the spot, because there's no need to bring light that you're the only one there, but keep all that close to your chest. You don't need to beat your own drum saying, there's no one here, mate, and stuff like that.
I reckon I could speak for a lot of people. I think when people hear the word negotiation, or, trying to get a deal, straight away they think about aggressive, going in hard, being arrogant. Yeah. It doesn't have to be like that, does it?
No, mate. As I said, the best negotiations are when you leave the negotiation with everyone feeling good. And that's the other parties as well. So biggest takeaway I can give to buyers out there is understanding key stakeholders of a negotiation, understanding that everyone in that scenario has different needs and wants.
Yep.
Your job is to ask the right questions to understand the needs and wants, and then you can show empathy and professionalism to try and get them to their needs and wants whilst protecting yours.
Love it.
And wrapping all that up with a good bit of rapport, good energy, not being an absolute dick, I'm telling you, you'll get better results, not only price-wise, but negotiation-wise, because as you know, like anything in life, like a good negotiation, did you really win the negotiation if you've burnt 3 other people in the process?
Yeah, it's short-sighted thinking, isn't it?
100%.
You may have heard me say it, think with the end in mind. The end being ultimately buying the property you want. So what have you got to do along the way to get to the
there?
end?
100%. So hopefully that ep added a little bit of value. It's always good to chew the fat. Me and Crossy always chat around this stuff off air. It's a vital part of the process, isn't it?
It is, and particularly at the moment, I think
Big time.
people might think that that's a bit counterintuitive, like it's easier to negotiate now because there's less competition. And that might be the case, but it's also a really good time to negotiate harder in the sense of getting what you want. But by the same token, as we've just covered off today, harder doesn't mean being arrogant or being flippant about it or, being aggressive.
Yeah.
It's creating win-wins, and that's the big one, isn't it?
Well, you just said it there. I really believe to get what you want, you need to know what everyone else wants and make them feel like you're trying to help them get there as well.
Yeah, I love that.
Watch what happens.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Thanks, Crossy.
On your mate.